We are now in front of Atlanta. From Dalton onto Marietta were the numerous and powerful lines of earthworks thrown up by both armies in their different positions. That spades were trumps, we had here ample testimony. If those works could be preserved by law for the benefit of our curious posterity, they would last for many generations. Each battlefield would thus have its own monuments to celebrate the events that transpired there. Each rifle pit speaking more to the heart of the spectator than would whole volumes of history.
America's Civil War was the bloodiest and most tragic conflict in our history. From 1861 to 1865, 4 million Americans fought over the future of this country, and they killed 620,000 of each other before it was settled. Our Civil War transformed a collection of individual states into a single nation. It settled forever the two great questions left from the nation's founding: the right to own slaves and the right for a state to leave the Union. That war defined us more clearly than any other event in American history. The armies of the North and South fought and died on more than 10,000 battlefields. When the 4-year war ended, not only were 620,000 soldiers left dead, but also 50,000 civilians had lost their lives. If a war of that scale were to be fought today, the corresponding death toll would be nearly 6 million American soldiers and 500,000 civilians, men, women, and children. The veterans of those titanic battles have long since passed away. Aside from the history written in books, recorded in photographs, or preserved as relics in museums, the last solid link of that most critical time in our nation's history is the actual ground on which these great battles of the Civil War were fought. Today, with the explosion of suburban sprawl, many of America's Civil War battlefields are rapidly being overwhelmed, destroyed, and foreclosed to future generations. Significant battlegrounds, those crucial links to our shared history, are facing the destructive realities of the backhoe and the bulldozer. If these sacred sites are to be protected, they can be protected only through the efforts of the largest and most effective battlefield preservation organization in the country, the Civil War Preservation Trust. Many believe that America's Civil War battlefields have already been preserved forever as national parks, like Gettysburg and Shiloh. But that is not the case. Less than 20% of the battlefields are currently protected. Nearly 1/3 of them have already been destroyed. All the rest of that blood-soaked ground remains largely unprotected, vulnerable, and often targeted for destruction. The Civil War Preservation Trust is in an urgent race against time to save the threatened hallowed ground of America's Civil War. But with the lightning-fast growth in many communities, these Civil War battlefields that were once farms, forests, and fields are increasingly being transformed into overcrowded suburbs. Rolling hills are being flattened for shopping malls, roads, and housing subdivisions. We are facing a major crisis. In some areas of high growth, the Civil War Preservation Trust estimates the time we have remaining to save the battlefields can be measured in months, not years. The Civil War Preservation Trust and its tens of thousands of concerned members are dedicated to saving the unprotected battlefields for posterity. Their mission is to preserve America's remaining Civil War battlefields and to promote appreciation of these hallowed grounds through education and heritage tourism. In partnership with committed government officials on the federal, state, and local levels, other nonprofit groups, and the private sector, the Civil War Preservation Trust has already saved more than 25,000 acres of hallowed ground in 19 states. Preserving these battlefields is important. 150 years ago, the ultimate course of our nation was not decided in the halls of Congress, or at the White House, or in the press. It was determined on the Civil War battlefields. To understand what happened at Gettysburg, Vicksburg, or any other Civil War battlefield, there is no better way than to walk in the footsteps of history and see the land as the heroes in blue and gray saw it.
You know, it wasn't too long ago that most of America's battlefields were in rural areas. But of course, in the last 10 or 20 years, that's all changed. The facts are now most of them are in suburban areas. And it's really going to be our generation that saves those battlefields, or they're not going to be saved. I mean, we are literally running out of time. It's really a question of saving it now or watching it be paved over.
By joining the Civil War Preservation Trust in this crucial work to save America's historic landscape, you are honoring and respecting those generations who came before us, who left us this magnificent legacy. By joining us today, you are ensuring that future generations will be able to come to these sacred battlegrounds where America was forged, to learn about momentous events that affect us, to ponder and dream, and to connect with our rich cultural past. America's Civil War battlefields. Learn from them. Be inspired by them. Remember the sacrifices made on them. Help the Civil War Preservation Trust preserve them. Your commitment today will help ensure that present and future generations can follow in the footsteps of America's Civil War heroes. To learn more, please visit our website at www.civilwar.org.